Hello, welcome back to the Cricket Nerds. All of the boys are back talking about England versus India. What did we say in our last podcast? You don't know because you didn't watch it. But the answer is we said there's always a twist and a turn in a test match. In the last podcast we did, England were absolutely on top. They were looking like firm favourites and they completely capitulated under the brilliance of India. India showed their class, took home the win, took home the series win. It was magnificent from India. A very disappointing loss from England once again. Let's get your raw feelings, Zach.
Mm. Um, Obviously, disappointment from a fan's perspective. Um, it was yet another great game of cricket. We can't deny that. I mean, there were ups and downs throughout. Um, the story for me is that India have found an absolute incredible player in Dhruv Jurel. He probably wouldn't have got a chance to play if it wasn't for Rishabh Pant's injury. Um, and he's just yet another one of these youngsters who's made a name for themselves through the IPL and has impressed at the test level. He was just really good to watch, and he was for me, the reason why India have won this test match, based on his ability to get India up to a decent first innings total that wasn't too far behind England's, and then to come out after on a hat-trick ball, survive it, and then play as fluently and without any concerns whatsoever for the rest of his innings. It was just really good. So overall, I feel disappointed for England, but I also can admire the cricket that was played and it was and acknowledge that it was a good test match.
Yeah.
How about you, Benj?
Well, I still feel that like when England had a lead of 40, it was still like, okay, look, England are still probably the favourites here. But I agree, like that Jarrell innings was such a momentum shift in the game. I think England had worked so hard to on day two to sort of get India to get themselves into that winning position. And yeah, you wouldn't have seen the podcast because the algorithm decided that we didn't need to be recommended to anyone. So there were no views because India didn't do very well because of the YouTube algorithm. Thanks, YouTube. But yeah, like that, the ability for him sticking out. I think you mentioned it with the second innings coming out on a hat trick ball and showing that presence of mind. But actually, that in the first innings, he stuck around for a long time and then was very aggressive on that morning of day three. I think when he was sort of dancing down the track and hitting people for six, it was just great hitting and yeah, superstar in the making there. I also feel like he was a massive wicket keeping upgrade as well from KS Barrett. Like, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination KS Barrett was a bad wicket keeper, but I think Jarrell just pulled off some fantastic catches. I think he took 3 catches in the match, I think, or potentially in that. I think he only took the 1 in the second innings, but I think he had 3 in the match overall. And yeah, just very impressive. I suppose the story of day 3 was Ashwin. James, what did you think of Ashwin's bowling?
He showed his experience. He showed his I think with experience comes the ability to adapt to surfaces. And that's what he does very, very well. And that's why I think England spinners have learned and have performed so well because they almost copy what Ashwin does every time. They just see how he adapts to what the surface is doing. If it is ragging a bit, if it's got some cracks in, then he bowls a little bit faster and a bit flatter, doesn't flight it up. If it's a little bit flatter, he will toss it up and he'll try and get more turn that way. And it was really, really experienced bowling. He capitalized on some pretty loose shots from England, and it meant that he never let up from his area, and that's where England did well in the first test because they made Ashwin err from that perfect spot that he can always put the ball on, that he can always bowl to. Whereas when he's on top, he will hit that area every single time, and he can bowl top spinners or off breaks or carom whatever he feels like, it's all hitting the same spot. It's all doing something a little bit different, and it means that wickets are always around the corner. For me though, the more impressive bowler of that day was Kuldeep Yadav. I thought he was absolutely incredible. I've constantly harp on about how much I rate him as a test match bowler. And even like Michael Vaughan, who isn't necessarily an opinion I respect that much, but he was saying that Kuldeep Yadav reminded him of a left arm Shane Warne. And I had to agree, because he did look like he was bowling with that amount of control, but he was also just trying to turn it the most he could. And he was playing with the batsman. He was obviously formulating a plan. He'd drag it out a little bit wider, throw in a wrong one, and then, dash one in, and suddenly Zach Crawley, who's looking good, gets castled. So it's super impressive from Kuldeep, and India's spinners in general. What do we think if we contrast that? Because I feel like that's the natural segue. India's bowlers, who did really well, Mohammad Siraj less so. Contrast that with how England's bowlers did, because there was, interestingly, a seamer from both sides that didn't bowl in the second innings. So both teams were just carrying a seamer. But I've got to say that one actually did have an impact on the game in Akashdeep, who, he batted a little bit, not a whole lot, but I think he got 9 or something, which, in a really close test match makes a difference. And he also took 3 important wickets. So, Zach, I'll throw it to you. What do you think the difference is in the bowling?
For me, it's the accuracy and the experience. I mean, just going off Kuldeep Yadav, the way you can be world-class test match leg spinner is through that accuracy, and he seemed to just hit the cracks a lot more than England's bowlers did. He was able to find that length and bowl it consistently, and that was what troubled England's batters. It meant that they couldn't really get him away. I think England kind of faltered in not taking the aggressive route, or not the aggressive route, but the positive route. They kind of went into pre-Bazball batting mode, I felt. But that it was excellent bowling, whereas England's bowlers aren't as accurate. And that's based on their inexperience. I mean, Shoaib Bashir for me looks like a really exciting prospect. But imagine if we had Shoaib Bashir 4 years in the future, after having played, I don't know, another 30 test matches, bowling 20 overs every game. Having that Bashir would be so much better for this series. Tom Hartley's been exceptional in this series. He's taken 20 wickets from just his first 4 test matches, gone at economy rate of about 3. But again, if it was 4 years down the line, that extra bit of accuracy, less loose balls that release the pressure from a batting side, would be so much better. And I think that's the difference, is that India didn't bowl that many released balls, which meant that England had to take the risks in order to score the runs. And I think we've shown, as the series has gone on, that these Indian bowlers have just come into their own, and it's been hard for the English batters. It's always hard to play spin in India. Every team struggles. And as I said to our group earlier, I said the only way England can win in India a series is if they play a 1 test match series, because England seem to win the first test match and then it's India from then on. But yeah, it's been impressive display from India. Ben, just coming to you then, in terms of the differences between the two sides in this test match, how do you feel like England could have improved in terms of their batting in that second innings?
I think the second innings, it was just I'm not really sure what they were doing. Like, okay, Pope got a first baller. Fine, that was okay. But I feel like England just threw away some of their wickets. I think Johnny Bairstow particularly. I mean, your reaction to when Bairstow got out was hilarious. It was the worst thing you've ever seen. You said, but the difference I want to highlight is between Jerv Jarrell and Ben Folkes, because they're in that similar position, and Jarrell had this ability to just rotate strike. If you looked at Jarrell and Gill batting this morning, they were consistently able to rotate strike. Jarrell was getting himself off strike and they were picking off the singles here and there. There was a period of time where they were just sort of getting the ones and twos, which is all that they needed just to truck along. Whereas I don't think Folks was able to do that, as you, I think you put it on our group chat, Zach. So I'm completely stealing your thunder here. But
No
Folks was doing okay. He's a good player of spin, but he wasn't able to just play those ones and twos and to get those shots off. So I think that was probably one of the main differences in the batting there. And just to highlight another difference between Folks and Jarrell, this is actually about their keeping, not their batting. But it was just something I was looking at with their buys and their stats. Folks had a bit of a torrid time in the first innings. I think he let through 12 buys in India's first innings. If you looked at it for this match, Jarrell let through 5 buys, and in total, Folks let through 16. So again, that's 11 runs, but 11 vital runs. Like I feel like if England had gone in there with a lead of 203, it's a different mindset to 192, in my view, anyway. But the last thing that I want to pick up on, and again, I think I want to throw this to you, James, unless you've got any other points that you want to raise off the back of this, is I feel like, in my view, the seamers were criminally underbowled in both of those last innings. I don't know if you have a different opinion of this, but I think that for Anderson to only have 3 when there were cracks there and to only have 3 overs. And then, Robinson didn't. Robinson was essentially a number 9 batter that didn't bowl. He got a 50, but it was all right. I mean, what did you think then of the choices of just bowling the 2 spinners all the way through today?
I thought it was. I honestly thought the spinners was the right call. I thought they looked the most dangerous. It was another magnificent test match pitch, so there was something in it for the seamers at the start of the test match, but less so on the last couple of days. I think that because India wanted to go about it and just knock off the runs, put the pressure on England early, the seamers was going to be the easy way to do that, in the same way that I think England would have backed themselves against Mohammad Siraj and Akashdeep if they were opening and having an extended spell. I think they would have felt a lot better over that. So I think it was the right call to bowl the spinners. That being said, I think Ollie Robinson showed why he was dropped last time and why he hasn't played the first few test matches, because he has got an incredible record so far in his test match career. He averages in the 20s. And when he first came onto the scene, he was bowling sort of early 80 mile an hour. And that was, it's nothing spectacularly fast for test match seam bowling, but it's fast enough that it makes the batsman have to think. And it was around the same pace as Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad at the time, and it was all going well. And then the pace has dropped, and it seems to have stayed pretty low. His fitness doesn't seem to be there. And it means that even though he can be accurate, he wasn't especially potent at all. And I really do think that pace drop has had quite a significant impact on how dangerous he is as a bowler. I know that, personally, I would much rather face somebody bowling 76 or 77 miles an hour than somebody bowling 84 or 85 miles an hour. It is, and that's obviously because I'm going to be pathetic against some fast bowling, but still, you've got more time to react. You've got more time to acknowledge the length and put away the bad balls, of which there were a few in the first innings. So that's where I saw quite a big issue with seam bowling, particularly from England. And I do want to touch on your point about Folks. I need to come to his defense. I think, yes, 11 buys, so what? I think it's about 30 fewer than any other wicketkeeper that from England would have conceded.
Yeah, that's
It's
probably
not an
true.
easy pitch to keep on, is it?
No,
It,
and
it
I
wasn't,
think
but I was just highlighting the difference between Jarrell. Like Jarrell was incredible.
he was incredible, and that's definitely, it's not so much Ben Folkes was rubbish compared to Jarrell. It was
Mm.
Jarrell was incredible. Here's the benchmark of Folkes. Folkes, though, it is important to acknowledge that he isn't getting the runs. However, that wasn't really why he was brought into the side. He's more of part of the bowling attack, at least in my opinion. That's where
Yeah.
he shines. That's what he's there for. If he gets 0 runs across the entire tournament or in the entire series, as long as he's participating in those wickets and he contrives those wickets a lot of the time. We saw how many deliveries from Rahan Ahmed that were seemingly innocuous, but they were getting under edges that Folkes was taking. That was outstanding. So that's how I see it.
I just think Folkes' batting, he's got a very good technique in Asia. When he first started playing cricket for England, I think it was on debut in Sri Lanka, he scored a century, and he's got a good record in those conditions, and he's good against spin. And the issue we have with Folkes is he's not great against the tail. He's not great at batting with the tail because he isn't the quickest batter in the world. He doesn't really play the attacking shots. And in a way, I don't know if it is better for him to move up the order. He's got the technique to be able to bat at, say, number 5, and then someone like Stokes, who's so good at batting with the tail, might be more suited to that 7 slot when he's just coming in and he has to attack from ball 1 instead of coming in feeling like he has to defend for 50 balls before he goes on. I'm not sure, but it's just an interesting thing to think about.
I do want to just say in this test match, in this series though, what's the option for Folkes? It's Bairstow. He's the other keeping option realistically. Folkes has scored more runs than Bairstow.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a no-brainer of keeping Folkes in. I'm just saying, yeah, it was a big. I think another difference though, isn't it as well? It just that net impact on the game from Jarrell just goes up even further, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I want to highlight something about the India batsmen, because I think absolutely everybody has had a significant impact so far now. Rohit Sharma brought up a big 50, and it was a very significant 50 because it was a fast and aggressive partnership with Yashasvi Jaiswal in that chase. The only person that I see that hasn't really contributed, and this is a slightly weakened India side, there's no two ways about it. It's a very, very strong side, but it's a weakened India side. The only person I see that hasn't really contributed is Rajat Patidar.
Yeah.
I just, can we really see a way that he stays in this side? He's in the first 3 test matches that he's played, he's only averaging 10.5. In a side where I think Sarfaraz Khan's averaging like 50 or something. Dhruv Jarrell's averaging like 90 now.
I mean, considering he kept Sarfaraz Khan out of the team for a test match, he scored fewer runs than Kuldeep Yadav.
Yeah.
I don't know, what do you think?
Like India's team at the moment, it has a lot of strong batters. I think if Kohli came back in and Rahul came back in, then we'd probably see Sarfaraz Khan and Patidar not in the team. And if Rishabh Pant came in, we probably wouldn't see Jude Jarrell in the team. But if you look at, as you said, James, pretty much all of them have had a great impact in this series and have all done really well. And I think in a way, it just shows the depth of talent that Indian cricket possesses, especially in the batting department. There's some incredibly talented players who have incredible techniques, and we've seen that there was analysis about Jaiswal's defensive technique, and he's so strong in defense, but then his ability to take the attack to the bowlers makes him such an amazing opening batsman in the mold of Virender Sehwag. So there's a lot of good stuff in India. I don't think they should necessarily drop Patidar for the 5th test unless Rahul's fit, but I don't think he's going to be. But yeah, I just think you may as well just give him a shot because he's a good batsman, and he's just gone through a bit of a slump in form, but he's proven to be a good batsman in difficult situations, and I don't think he's necessarily had too many difficult situations in this series. But looking at this series, because we're 4 test matches in, we've got only one to play. India have obviously won the series. And there will be an inquest into this from an England point of view. But when you compare the results from 2020, 2021, when England last toured India, England won the first test match quite convincingly after big runs in the first innings by Root. Then in the second test, India won by 317 runs. England didn't manage to score past 200. In the third test, India won by 10 wickets, bowling England out for 112 and 81. And in the fourth test, India won by an innings and 25 runs, with England's top score in the first innings being 205. So comparing those results to the results we've had so far, this England team has performed so much better, even though it's the same scoreline. They've performed so much better. And to see where England were, to see where they are now, even though they've had moments in this series where we've thought England have given it away and wasted an opportunity to win, I think we can still be happy with how England have performed in this series and take a lot of encouragement from it. I'm not sure about you guys.
I think that's a really interesting perspective, and I think it is really good to look back to recent history and realize how much this England side has improved, and with mostly the same players. So obviously the way of playing it works. That being said, I think there is still definitely scope for a lot of lessons to be learned from this England side. Stokes is an incredible leader, and him and Brendan McCullum have created a very, very good way of working that obviously brings out the best in a lot of players. But I think there are many tactical decisions that still need to be improved on and refined. You can't just go after every single test match where, I think we've lost more test matches than we've won this year. So, there's, you can't just go through all of them and say, oh yeah, it's fine. I wouldn't change a thing. I've got no regrets. It's like, well, no, you obviously have some regrets because it's more fun to win than it is to lose, no matter how you're playing. So it's important that they carry on playing this way because it is improving them. It's making them do well. However, I think just refining that, getting the more nuance, making the correct decisions in the appropriate situations is how England are going to turn from being a side that is now able to compete to a side that is able to consistently beat the top teams in the world.
Yeah, that's what we want to see. We want to see a team that any team you support, you want to see them be a dominant side for an extended period of time. Like you think of Australia. Australia have been the dominant cricket team for a long, long time since the West Indies drop off, basically. The New Zealand rugby team, they've been dominant. Everyone wants to see their country or their team have that sort of effect. And at the moment, the way Indian cricket's going, yes, they can't get their hands on any silverware, but they have all the tools and everything together to compete consistently. And we've seen it this series with the backup players they've got. And hopefully the way England are playing, yes, they can, with that refinement that you talk about, James, they can put something together that can compete with the best. But there's still one test match left. England can still walk away with a very respectable 3-2. India will be looking to take away a 4-1 victory. And we're still going to bring you all the updates and all the reviews from the test matches and the day's play and all the rest of it. So if you've been enjoying so far, remember to leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to support the channel further, you can do by becoming a member. It helps us out a lot. You can also follow us on social media. All the links are in the link tree in the description. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.